right, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone in attendance. The committee has under consideration the estimates of the Ministry of Education for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2025. I'd ask that we go around the table and have members introduce themselves for the record. Minister, when it comes to your turn, if you would introduce your colleagues, that would be appreciated. My name is Jackie Lovely, and I'm the MLA for Camrose and the chair of this committee. We'll start to my right, please.
My name is Andrew Wojczenko, and I'm MLA for Drayton Valley, Devon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandon Lunty, MLA for Leduc Beaumont.
Chelsea Petrovic, MLA for Livingston McLeod.
Good afternoon, everyone. Peter Singh, MLA Calgary East.
Martin Long, the MLA for West Yellowhead.
Jennifer Johnson, MLA for Lacombe Panoka.
Dimitris Nicolaides, Minister of Education. To my far left, I have Kindy Joseph, Assistant Deputy Minister of Program and System Support. To my immediate left, Laura Pilpo, Deputy Minister. To my immediate right, Jeff Willen, Assistant Deputy Minister of Financial Services and Capital Planning. And to my far right, Emily Ma, Executive Director of K-12 Fiscal Oversight.
You're right, MLA Edmonton Beverly Clearview and Official Opposition Critic for Labour.
Amanda Chapman, MLA Calgary Beddington.
MLA Diana Batten, Calgary Acadia.
Good afternoon, my name is David Egan. I'm the MLA for Edmonton Northwest.
All right, thank you, everyone. A few housekeeping items here. I'd like to note that Honorable David Egan is substituting for Ms. Goring. And note that the microphones are operated by Hansard staff, so no need to turn them on and off. Committee proceedings are live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. The audio and visual stream and transcripts of meeting can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. If you haven't already, please set your cell phones to silent. And we will begin shortly, but for the record, I will read in, honorable members, the main estimates for the Ministry of Education shall be considered for a total of 6 hours. I would note that the Standing Committee on Families and Communities has already completed 3 hours of debate in this respect. As we enter our 4th hour of debate, I will remind everyone that speaking rotation for these meetings is provided for under Standing Order 59.016, and we now at the point in the rotation where speaking times are limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for both the member and the ministry. These speaking times may be combined for a maximum of 10 minutes. Please remember to advise the chair at the beginning of your rotation if you wish to combine your time with the ministers. With the concurrence of the committee, I will call a 5-minute break near the midpoint of the meeting. However, the 3-hour clock will continue to run. Does anyone object to having a break today? Okay, good. We'll have one, maybe around 5-ish. When we adjourned this morning, we were over 4 minutes into exchange between Mr. Bochenko and the minister. I'll now invite the member to complete the remaining time in his rotation. You have 5.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I apologize I didn't finish my questions first time around, but I'm thankful that we have another 3 hours that we can get to all the questions here. And as I was speaking before the break, I was very thankful to the minister and his team for the amazing work they do, not only in my constituency, but across the province. And the amount of school that is being built right now is unprecedented. And once again, thank you, Minister, and thank you, team, for amazing work you guys do. So coming back to my original question that I had regarding red tape reduction, to the Minister through the Chair, Budget 2024 announced the largest education budget in Alberta's history at $9.25 billion. Can we be sure the greatest portion of that funding is being directly invested into Alberta students and not the administration bloat and red tape reduction? Sorry, and red tape, I meant to say, I apologize. I note and applaud that on page 69 of government statements, governance and administration expenses are frozen from budget 2023. How does, some question and then a follow-up on it as well. How does Alberta Education ensure effective control of administrative spending by school divisions? And the second question is, what determines the amount of governance and administrative spending allowed by each school division?
Sure, thank you, member, and through you to the chair. Obviously, it's of incredible urgency and priority that we ensure that the maximum amount of dollars are going where they're needed the most, which is to the classroom, which is to hire teachers, hire educational assistants, and provide specialized learning supports for students that require them. And that's a commitment and desire of the ministry. We want to make sure that our dollars are going directly to the classroom to support learning for our kids. So one of the ways in which we do that is by providing a range. Well, sorry, let me take a step back. One of the ways in which we do that is by ensuring, by providing a specific stream of administration funding. So there are different envelopes, or as per Member Chapman's analogy, different buckets of funding. I use the analogy all the time as well. Different buckets that are that we provide to our school boards. And so one of those buckets is specifically for administrative expenses and administrative spending. And so a school jurisdiction, depending on their size, can receive funding for administrative expenses, which ranges from 3.2% to 5% of their total operating budget. Because of course, a school division, the larger operating budget, sometimes the larger the requirements that you have around administrative oversight to manage more complex programs and other dynamics. So there is a range, and they receive a clear amount between the range of 3.2% to 5% of total operating expenditures. What that looks like in real dollar terms, Budget 24 would provide $276 million in the 24-25 fiscal year in the targeted system administration grant. So we do want to ensure that the maximum amount of dollars are going to the classroom, as we mentioned, and of course, there's always the practice of reviewing their audited financial statements to explore and see, to make sure that those dollars are going where they were intended to.
Thank you very much. And I hope within 1 minute here I can ask one more question regarding the amount of shortage on school bus drivers. And I noted as well that on page 81, of the physical plan indicates that student transportation operating expenses will grow $64 million from budget 2023 to budget 2024 into the budget 2024 to 2025. And I'm very pleased to see that the shortage of bus drivers and buses themselves are being handled in your ministry as well. So if we can please touch on how many students are transported from school daily, and how many kilometers are driven daily over how many bus routes in our province?
Well, thank you. A very important question. I don't think I'll be able to give you all of those specifics in the 10 seconds that I have left. But with respect to the number of students, we do transport 335,000 students across the province through transportation services. And if we have time, I'd be happy to tell you more about the kilometers.
Okay, thank you. That wraps up our time. Over to the official opposition, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. Lovely to see you again. I'm just going to move us over to the business plan for a little bit here. So outcome 4, Alberta's K-12 education system and workforce are well managed. And now I see that attracting and retaining teachers is listed as performance metric 4A. And I have heard from a few teachers, well, quite a few teachers, some concerns about the new teacher complaint process that came into effect last year. I know that teachers felt that the management of that process had been working effectively, and I know that there were also outside experts who also felt that the complaint process had been working well. At the time of the change, Richard Rand had said, "I can comfortably say that the current ATA-led Practices and procedures overseeing teacher discipline in Alberta represent as good or better a system governing professional discipline as any I have encountered in any profession. Mr. Rand, of course, is a lawyer with specific expertise in professional discipline cases. So, the process used to be that complaints were made to the ATA, an investigation would occur, the complaint would then move to a dispute resolution process or a professional conduct committee hearing. From that hearing, if found guilty, a teacher would face penalties, anywhere from fines to a recommendation to the ministry that a teaching certificate be suspended or canceled. In the process now, as I understand it, it's a registrar, a single registrar who receives complaints, and the Alberta Teaching Profession Commissioner is responsible for the investigation. Just looking for a little clarification, is it correct that the Office of the Commissioner is arm's length? So is it an arm's length group that's investigating complaints against teachers, or is it ministry staff that are responsible for the process? And has any of the work on investigating teacher complaints been contracted out to private companies?
Thank you so much, member. We'll move over to the ministry for the answer.
Yeah, thank you. Short answer, it is arm's length, and the commission has its own complement of staff. I believe the current complement is around 20 FTEs, so that they can conduct their work. Yes, it is. Here it is right in front of me. I should look at my notes, but yeah, 20 FTEs that are allocated. And it's important that it's set up as an independent organization, as we mentioned. And as you mentioned as well, it did begin operation on January 1st, 2023. So a new process, and I know teachers and families and other partners are still working to get a little bit more familiar with the new process. But we believe it's essential that there is independent oversight, especially around concerns regarding potential misconduct or other actions that may require disciplinary action. Of course, oftentimes many of these can involve concerns over student safety or inappropriate behavior, and it's important that we believe that it's important that that's addressed objectively and independently, and any subsequent reprimand or decisions be recommended through an independent process.
Okay. I know I asked a few questions there, so I'll just check in again. Has any of the work on investigating teacher complaints been contracted out to private companies, contracted out of the department?
Let me double check that with my team. I believe there may be opportunities where some of the work is contracted out. I see Jeff's nodding his head, so.
Through competitive investigators.
Okay, yeah. So some of the investigators that the commission will use, of course, to investigate some of the complaints are contracted out through RFP.
So that's 20 FTEs and then plus some private outside investigators.
Correct. Yeah, contractors, yeah.
Okay. I'd tried to look up some data on complaint rates. There's not a lot publicly available, but I did find some numbers from 2021. And just to be clear to everyone, this is...
It's been called on?
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. The point of order is understanding order 23B. The member speaks to the matters other than the question under discussion. And Madam Chair, the committee has convened for the purpose of considering the ministry's 2024 budget, including estimates, fiscal plan, business plan, and the matter that has been raised by the members is not within the boundaries of the said topic. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, member. We'll move over to the opposition.
Yes, I think that as the member finishes her argument, she is making a reference to from then to now and into the future, which is a very common thing when we talk about budgets in the current fiscal year, is by way of context.
Well, thank you so much, members. So for this moment, I don't consider this to be a point of order, but if you would kindly make reference to the budget as you move on, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'm still just on this business plan outcome right now. I'm allowed to be on the business plan, yes? Perfect, great. Yeah, because still, so now I've lost track of my business plan. Performance metric 4A. So complaint numbers, I found, oh right, I did just want to clarify for the so many people watching at home that we're talking about a very small percentage of teachers here who have complaints against them, less than 1%. So the data I found for 2021, it was 0.32%. And so that was a report of 163 requests for investigations, from which 132 investigations actually moved forward. And so I'm just looking for a comparison now. So in 2023, how many complaints did the registrar receive? How many investigations were completed? And how many investigations may still be pending?
Sure. I guess just in short, I would say it's not a apples to apples comparison because, of course, the new model has only begun operation since January 1st of 23. So previous complaints would have been through the old process. So there could be an argument to make that a new process might increase or decrease total complaints. So it may not be a direct apples to apples comparison, but the commission will be releasing very shortly actually it'll be tabled to the legislature, their annual report. And that will cover the period of operations from January 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2023. And that information, of course, will be tabled to the legislature, will be publicly available for all members of the Assembly and the general public as well to be able to look at that information.
Thank you so much, Minister. Member?
Thank you. And so through the chair, again, I believe that in the original announcement about this process shift, the budget for this teacher complaint process to bring it in-house was $4 million per year. And so two questions. One is just, I don't know if you're able to tell me which of the estimate budgets lines does this fall under the ministry amount, or if it's a different budget line it falls under, and if the minister is able to confirm if that cost has stayed the same, if we're looking at $4 million per year, or if we've seen a change.
Member?
Yeah, I'm just getting the answer for you. If you have I don't have the main estimates in front of me, but if you do, it's line item 2.0. I couldn't tell you the title to reference it.
Education system support.
Here you go. Yes, that's the one. Education system support.
Gotcha.
I think, and apologies, I think you had another question as part of that.
The question was, is that still an accurate figure, the $4 million per year? Did that end up being the cost to bring this complaint process in-house, as it were?
Yeah, let me check on the total cost of the commission and get back to you. I believe it was around the 4 million mark, but let me just clarify and get back to you.
It's like I feel like I need a short question. Okay. Well, I'll just have to come back to this in my next one, but I'm going to start because I'm going to keep going on some business plan metrics. Performance metric 1B, high school to post-secondary transition rate. So in 2021-22, 59.7% of Alberta high school students made the transition to post-secondary within 6 years of entering grade 10. Now that's a decline from the 2020-2021 rate of 60.3%, and the business plan as it stands only hopes to get back to that 2020-2021 level 2 years from now, so by 25-26. Now I know these seem like small percentage differences. Through the chair, is the minister able to quantify how many fewer Alberta students pursued post-secondary training this year?
Thank you, Member. Minister?
Sure, thank you. I'll just was able to get a clearer answer for you on just coming back to the Teaching Profession Commission. Yes, the 4 million, as you mentioned, was allocated to support that. We're still waiting, of course, until the fiscal year comes to a complete end at the end of March to see their complete actuals. However, it appears as though they're tracking under budget to some extent. I couldn't tell you, though, at this stage whether it's significantly under budget or modestly. But once the fiscal year completes, then we'll have a closer picture as to how that $4 million was allocated.
Thank you so much. We are going to go over now to the independent member. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister. Excuse me. On page 39 of the Ministerial Business Plan, it states that 44 million is going to improve access to educational assistance. Can you explain what is meant by improve access and how we can ensure that this 44 million will get to the front line and is not lost somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, thank you. An important question. So in terms of expanding, I think the language that you used was expanding educational assistance. I don't want to misrepresent if that was the case, Madam Chair. Maybe the member can just provide clarity again.
Improve access.
Improve access. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So what does that mean? Well, effectively, that means increasing the capacity, increasing the number of educational assistants that our school divisions can hire. The 44 million that is being provided this year is part of 126 million that was committed in budget 23 to support classroom complexity. This is the first time that funding is being specifically provided to address classroom complexity, which was a new grant made available through budget 23. And this year's allocation of that would be approximately 44 million. And indeed, that'll go towards hiring more educational assistants and as well providing additional hours to existing educational assistants. So again, creating more access to educational assistants. The dollars can also be used to hire other professionals and experts that may be needed to support classroom complexity dynamics, including speech-language pathologists, psychologists, and interpreters and other professionals. I hope, Madam Chair, through you, that I was able to address all of the questions.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister. And if we can go on to education property tax, I'm curious how this rate is determined. It is collected municipally, but is it the province that sets this rate? And in this case, for an increase. Is this simply an increase from an increase in population, or is this a planned overall tax increase?
Yeah, thank you. The increase is attributed to increase in population, and Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, but rates remain frozen. He's nodding his head and not kicking me into the table, so that's always a good sign. And as I mentioned, that of course that indicates that the increase is due to a population increase and not due to rate increase, which remains frozen. I think it remained frozen for a few years now, and continues to remain frozen.
Okay. Thank you. Debt servicing costs have risen substantially, and they are forecast to increase another 27% for 24-25. Can you explain the increase in the debt servicing, which is now more than the cost of a new school? And additionally, overall ministry deficit is now over $6 billion and growing. Is this sustainable, and what are your plans to manage it?
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. Debt servicing costs are primarily related to P3 partnerships for schools and for them to be built under the Alberta Schools Alternative Procurement Projects. Of course, a P3, as the member may know, is defined as an infrastructure project with a private contractor. As each school bundle is completed and each school process moves forward, the payments to interest and principal commence. And those interest payments, of course, will be part of the overall debt servicing costs that are required for school builds.
Thank you, Minister. Member?
Okay. I hope we have time for this one. It appears there are no plans for funding for pods or microschools. Are pods and microschools, which are already practicing in the province, going to be acknowledged and incorporated into the education system? And if so, what are the plans for this to happen, and how would this affect the overall budget?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is something that, and apologies if I get the acronym wrong, but the Homeschooling Association has talked with me about. I wasn't too aware of it prior to becoming minister, but they've been very helpful at bringing me up to speed on some of the dynamics and talking about pods, learning pods, and micro schools, and I think there's some interesting aspects to explore there. I think it's important to have some more conversations with home education partners and their association and others to explore what that might look like. It's hard to say at this stage whether we would be in a position to be able to move forward or make any changes to regulation and or legislation to accommodate that. I think we need to conduct a little bit more analysis and have some more conversations with partners to see what that might look like if we do indeed decide to move forward with some additional regulation or legislation in this area. So I think it'd be imprudent of me to make any kind of commitment at this stage. I'd want to understand a little bit more about the benefits, potential challenges, regulatory and or legislative environment, because I know there's always concerns in any area, whether it's in home education or in any area, whenever there's new regulation or new legislation being introduced. That can sometimes create more red tape, reporting requirements, other considerations. So if something is indeed desired by home education partners and their relevant associations, then we can take a very close look at that and take their advice and direction as to how best to proceed. I don't think it'd be best for us to do take any action in isolation, but we are actively chatting with them on this question, and at some point in the future may have some more to say.
Thank you, Minister. Member?
Thank you. And to you through the chair. The town of Black Falls has been one of Canada's fastest growing communities, which has brought both successes and prosperity and also great challenges. One of these challenges has been school capacity. For a town of over 12,000 and growing, Black Falls will see their first high school open this coming fall, and this is a great success. One being highly anticipated not only by Black Falls, but also its neighboring communities where the extra load on their high schools will be eased. Another school in Black Falls, St. Gregory's, for pre-K to grade 9, was near capacity the day it opened in 2017, and today is at about 134% capacity. Budget 24 just announced a new school that was approved for design funding in April. It has now been approved for a build, and this is being celebrated with great anticipation. Can the minister speak to any other capital projects currently being looked at in the constituency of Lacombe-Panoka?
Yeah, I'd be very happy to. If memory serves me correct, I think there are two projects. And you'll forgive me if offhand I can't recall the boundaries of the incredible constituency of Lacombe-Panoka, but I believe there's the Red Deer Catholic project that we mentioned, and of course that has received full construction funding, an important project that requires full funding to be able to move forward. Also with I have the note here with Wolf Creek School Division. They're also requesting an additional school. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, this one is already moving ahead and slated to open. I can pull up the capital plan of Wolf Creek and Red Deer Catholic to look at additional projects that they have in the pipeline. But there is that the Iron Ridge Secondary Campus with Wolf Creek School Division that we've noted that is slated to begin occupancy in May of this year and move forward, and then the new K-5 school in Black Falls, as we've discussed, as part of the Red Deer Catholic separate school division. So I'd be happy to take a closer look at any other capital priority projects that Wolf Creek under Red Deer Catholic have on their planning list that fall within the Lacombe-Panoka constituency.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. Member, please proceed.
You know, there's 30 seconds left. Did you want to speak more to Iron Ridge? Through the chair.
I was going to say, if you have 30 seconds left, it's a good opportunity to throw in a joke.
To throw in a joke. I'm not one
right?
for jokes. I was draw a blank. You're more than welcome to, Minister.
No,
Through
no
the
worries.
chair.
I don't think I have anything additional to add there, but just I guess I would say that, we do look very carefully at, projects in all corners of our province and evaluate them based on.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll move back over to the government side. Pardon me.
Through you to the minister, I was hoping we could expand a little bit more on how many kilometers driven daily over how many bus routes in this province for student transportation, and I'm hoping we can go back to that as Livingston McLeod is a rural riding, and we have about 50 schools within that riding. So to me, I'm very interested if you don't mind going back to that question and answering it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I had the additional information. Here we go. I had it in front of me and then moved it away, but thank you, Laura. I think we mentioned that there's 335,000 students that receive transportation services in terms of kilometers. So that's approximately 440,000 kilometers that are driven each and every day. And there are approximately 5,800 school bus routes across the province. The average ride time, average urban ride time is 22 minutes across our school divisions, and the average rural ride time is 38 minutes. Happy to provide any additional information that you'd like on that piece. Perhaps I'll just note, in Budget 24, our total transportation funding envelope is 490, just shy of 493 million. That's how much we're providing in Budget 24 for transportation for the 24-25 fiscal year. And this is an increase of about 80 million or 19% from the previous year. So we do want to increase funding for transportation services so that we can, of course, expand routes and hire more drivers and bring these drive times down a little bit more.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Minister. I was just hoping, Minister, I see on page 68 of the estimates that line item 3.4, which obviously is transportation and takes a large but vital, important expense from ministry. In 2020, the government completed work under the Student Transportation Task Force looking into elements like cost, eligibility, and safety. I understand that the transportation funding model was implemented in past budgets. Are you able to touch on the following? Is the funding model from working groups still in place for this year's budget, and what impact has the funding model had on transportation costs for your ministry? 2, key to this task force was student safety. Are you able to determine what portion of your transportation budget is for student safety? Additionally, what safety measures are in place to protect students using school transportation? And 3, does the student transportation budget only include vehicle and fuel costs, or does this also include the relevant support staff as well?
A lot to unpack there. I'll do my best to hopefully provide you with all of the answers that you're looking for. Specifically to your question around the working group, indeed, our government convened the Student Transportation Task Force in 2020 to look at ways in which student transportation could be improved and strengthened. Those recommendations were provided and are being implemented by the ministry. The student transportation funding model was updated for the 23-24 school year based on feedback that we gathered from the task force report and recommendations and from school authorities and parents who participated in the engagements. The updated model supports education choice and ensures funding follows students who are transported to a school of choice, including alternative programs, because of course this wasn't always the case. Budget 24 provides, as I mentioned, just shy of 493 million in transportation funding for the upcoming fiscal year, which represents an increase of approximately 80 million from last year. And over the last 2 years, transportation funding has increased by 154 million or 45.6%. So there's been some significant investments in student transportation over the past couple of years. The increase will support the implementation of an updated model announced under Budget 23, so distance eligibility criteria changes and to help support enrollment growth. Student transportation system will be safer for students. I know you talked a little bit about safety and the impacts of safety. The funding is now targeted to help ensure that funding is used to support the provision of transportation services and can't be transferred to other areas. Has to stay, again, to use Member Chapman's vernacular, has to stay in the transportation bucket. So it can't be used for other programs or services. And this will help decrease ride times for rural students and address increased demand for specialized transportation services. And for students in metro regions. Effective September 1st, 2025, eligible distance criteria for student transportation will change from 2.4 kilometers to 1 kilometer for all students. That, of course, is the walk distance, as is known a little bit more colloquially. The methodology used to calculate the distance will use the shortest driving route. And school divisions are working towards that. I don't have the exact number, but a number of school divisions are already there or are already at the 1 kilometer distance. Other school divisions are continuing to work towards it. So I think I don't know. I may have missed a part of your question, but I see we still have a few minutes, so perhaps I'll just pause there and see if I left anything out.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Minister. Yes, thank you for touching on the student safety and the distance for the busing. So I know that this has affected my family in a positive way, so thank you for that. One of the questions, and I think you did touch on it briefly, but does the student transportation budget only include the vehicle and fuel cost, or does it also include the relevant support staff as well, as I think?
Yeah, it does include staff. It does include all of those pieces. It includes just broadly funding that's required to be able to deliver those services, and of course, particularly transportation services. So it does include those pieces. There's also, which I think is important to note here within that bucket, the school bus driver grant. And this was a new grant that was introduced in Budget 23 to help respond to concerns that we had heard from school authorities. We had heard some concerns over inability to recruit and retain drivers, largely on the recruiting side. And so the driver grant helps to address concerns over some of those shortages and helps to provide incentive and helps to cover some of the costs associated with driver education and training. As well, I believe it was last year, if memory serves me correct, changes were made to the MELT program, specifically around school transportation, to ease and help support greater recruitment of drivers. Because, of course, the MELT requirements presented with some onerous challenges specifically for school authorities. So making that adjustment has made things a little bit easier. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the vast majority of our routes have permanent drivers, which is great to see. And I know that the increased funding that we're providing to student transportation will help ensure that more kids are able to be transported safely to school and in a shorter time as well.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Minister. Minister, I wanted to congratulate you again that Alberta continues its tradition of having world-class education here. The 2022 PISA scores globally ranked Alberta second in reading, second in science, and seventh in math within the statistical deviation. In Canada, we were ranked first in reading, first in science, and second only behind Quebec in math. Key Objective 1.1 on page 37 of the business plan explains that your ministry's goal is to continue to offer a curriculum that provides students with literacy, numeracy, citizenships, and practical skills. My question is, to ensure that we are preparing students for success in the classroom, what does Budget 2024 provide for an updated curriculum implementation?
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to address that. I got about 45 seconds. So just the short answer to your immediate question, There's approximately 34 million in budget 24 to support curriculum implementation for 24-25 year. And indeed, as you mentioned, our PISA rankings, 2022 PISA rankings, we have reached exceptional levels. In Canada, we're first in reading, first in science, and second in math, which are some exceptional results. And my hat's off to all staff, teachers, and school authorities and parents for their amazing work in helping to deliver these strong results. We are continuing to move forward with updating and modernizing our curriculum. I'll have more to say on that probably later this week with respect to social studies curriculum as well.
Perfect timing, Minister. We'll move over to the official opposition for more questions.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm just going to go back to that one that we didn't have time to finish off, performance metric 1B. So that's our high school to post-secondary transition rate. As I mentioned, we've seen a drop here from our 2021 levels. The plan as it stands is only to get back to that by 25-26. But the question I had for the minister is, that is a small percentage difference, but is the minister, through the chair, is the minister able to quantify how many fewer Alberta students pursued post-secondary training this year?
Sure. I don't have the exact amount, but indeed there has been a slight decrease, as you've noted. The decrease is quite small, so it's not considered to be of statistical significance and represents some significant change. The 6-year transition rate does remain quite stable over the period of those 6 years. And so something to keep an eye on, but no cause for significant concern. I think, as you mentioned, in the 21-22 year, just under 60% of high school students made the transition to post-secondary within 6 years of entering grade 10. And it is something that we are quite interested in. We do want to look at new innovative ways, or even just expanding current ways to help students transition into post-secondary. We talked a little bit this morning about collegiate schools and collegiate programs and additional funding that we're providing to that. We're also providing additional funding as per the recommendations of the Career Education Task Force to strengthen and support dual credit opportunities. Dual credit opportunities, of course, help students gain credit for post-secondary programs and courses while they're in high school. And I just think they're incredibly amazing opportunities, and more that we can do to expand those options and to give students an opportunity to earn post-secondary credits while they're completing high school is exceptional. We're also looking at additional measures of helping students gain early admission to post-secondary and continue to complete their Alberta diploma requirements as well. So it is an important point, and thank you for highlighting it, because I think it's quite clear the more that we can do to help create stronger transitions between the K-12 system and the post-secondary world is critically important, and I believe is a key driver in helping students that may not have contemplated post-secondary or weren't planning to, if their pathways are expanded and available and easier for students to access, it can help increase that transition to post-secondary. So definitely something that is of top concern to the ministry.
Thank you, Minister. That was a very fulsome answer. Through the chair, is the minister able to provide information about how Alberta students compare to other provinces in post-secondary participation rates? I know how important it is for this government to be keeping pace with comparator provinces, so are we keeping up?
Thank you, Member. Minister?
Excuse me. Yeah, I don't know if I have that exact information at the moment. I'll take a look at it, this might actually be occurring at the same time, so I hate to suggest it, but the Ministry of Advanced Education may have some more of those more comparable numbers. I think they're meeting at the same time, or maybe they met this morning. They did meet this morning. But just a quick comment on that. Obviously, I spent 4 years there as Minister of Advanced Ed, so I have a little bit of inside knowledge. I don't know, I can't speak to that. Again, I may be off, but just from my 4 years of experience and understanding, Alberta traditionally lags behind other provinces in terms of post-secondary participation rates. There's been a lot of questions or speculation about why that's the case. Oftentimes it's been speculated, at least from what I remember, that very strong economic opportunities in the oil sands and in other areas caused a lot of individuals to not just look to go to post-secondary and just go directly into the workforce. Of course, we have seen in previous years some downturn with economic activity in the oil sands. Is starting to kind of tick back up now, but some folks were suggesting or predicting that when there would be a decrease in some of that economic activity related to our oil sands, that we would see post-secondary participation rates start to increase. Didn't really happen. So there may be broader underlying factors here that maybe the Ministry of Advanced Ed might have some broader insight into.
Thanks, Minister. Okay, I'm just going to do another business plan performance metric. It's metric 1C, percentage of students who achieve the acceptable standard. And so this one had some areas of concern. So if we go back a few years, 2018 to 2019, it was just about 80% of students achieved acceptable in language arts. Today we're down to only 71.3% of students achieving acceptable standards. So under 5 years of this government managing education in this province, we've seen this huge drop in the effectiveness of our education system to prepare students for high school. Math is even more of a concern. We've dropped from 66.6% in 2018-2019 to just 54.3% now. And even more concerning is that the targets that have been set by this government actually don't come anywhere close to getting us even back to that 2019 level. So you have allowed outcomes in language arts to fall over 8% in 5 years, but the plan now seems to be just to improve those scores by 1% over 3 years. In math, it's a drop of 12% in the 5 years of your government, and the plan is to improve that by just 2% over the next 3 years. These numbers are a huge decline, and I find this really concerning. So, I mean, let's just start with what's being done now to address this problem.
Sure. Of course, there are some concerns in that regard. I think it's important to note that it's not unique to Alberta. If you look at the rest of the country, the rest of the world, scores have similarly taken a decline. And a significant component of that decline is attributed to COVID and learning disruption. So just to come back to your immediate question of what are we doing, a couple of things that we're doing. Number one, we are providing additional funding in the learning loss bucket. And again, this is to provide additional support to students that are identified as not being at grade level, to provide them with some targeted intervention and support. These interventions are incredibly effective and are able to move the vast majority of students, well north of 80% of participants in cases, up to grade level in just a matter of a few months. So there is a learning disruption, and then we've also required, as recently as a couple of years ago, mandatory early literacy and numeracy screening in grades 1 to 3. So students are assessed at 2 times throughout the year to gauge their literacy, numeracy skills and abilities. And if students are identified to require additional support, intervention is provided usually through an educational assistant or other support staff who come to the school and kind of collect all the students that are at a certain level, have them in a separate room or class, and provide them with targeted intervention to help get them up to grade level. So, but I do just want to re-highlight again that jurisdictions nationally and around the world have seen decline broadly, and this is reflected in the 2022 PISA rankings. You see that a lot of results experience a decline. That being said, Alberta is the highest in Canada in science and reading, and the second highest in Canada in math.
So looking at the budget, base funding is decreasing. So I'm I'm just having trouble understanding how a cut can be justified at a time where Alberta students are simply not meeting the standards that we need to see in this province. I respect how hard our students and teacher works, but this metric should really be sounding alarm bells that the chronic underfunding by this government in education is having really negative impacts. Oh, that wasn't a question, that was more of a statement. My apologies. I thought it was going somewhere, but then it just didn't. But I can see you don't have a ton of time to answer it. We have the lowest funding per student in Alberta, math scores. So why is it that we're outright refusing to give education the funding it deserves? Question mark.
Sure, very quickly in 20 seconds, our school divisions are forecasting to see 33,000 additional students, and the funding that's provided in Budget 24 provides funding for 33,000 additional students. And of course, there is a supplemental enrollment growth grant that we use to top up jurisdictions that see enrollment increase above and beyond their forecasts and their projections, and we'll continue to evaluate the numbers and support them.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll move over to the independent member. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister. My colleague across began with page 37 in the Ministerial Business Plan, the performance measure of grade 9 students. And I was curious how those numbers compared to the years before 2020, and I thank the Minister for addressing that. And then how does that percentage compare to the rest of Canada and internationally, since we are sitting at number 2, and I trust we're going to get to number 1. I suspect very quickly. Maybe that's just my hopefulness, but I see that around the corner. And it is nice to see that steps are being taken to address this and to make sure that it's dealt with properly. I'm curious if you know if this is happening in other grades. If this is grade 9 as of 2023, they would have been in grade 6-ish in 2020. Where our grade 1s were they're now at grade 3 or grade 6. What are their marks looking like? And are we taking the same kind of steps below grade 9 to ensure that these students are going to be successful in post-secondary endeavors?
Yeah, thank you. Important question, and I was able to pull a little bit more information about some of those stats as per Member Chapman's question. So maybe I'll just provide a little bit more detail and context for the entire committee, and hopefully address your questions as well. So the last actual for the percentage of students who've achieved the acceptable standard on provincial achievement tests only includes results for grade 9 students. The 2021-22 results include 73.5% in language arts and 60% in math, included results for both grades 6 and 9. In 2022-23, the result of 71% in language arts and 54% in math included results for grade 9 students only. And when looking at the trend for grade 9 students over time, to your point, we have observed a decline in results between 2018-19 and 21-22. No surprise, some things happened during that time period. Language arts results decreased from 75.1 to 69.4, and math results decreased from 60 to 53.1. However, that being said, we are starting to see some improvements in grade 9 results. So language arts results have increased by 1.9% from 69.4% in 21-22 to 71.3% in 22-23. So starting to slowly tick back up. And we saw the same in math, which increased by 1.2%, 53% in 21-22 to 54% in 22-23. So again, there are a number of challenges that Albertans have experienced and faced over the last few years, but we are starting to see those important measures trend back in the right direction. I think you mentioned about some international comparisons as well, but again, just want to highlight again for the committee that we are second in Canada in math, first in Canada in reading, and first in Canada in science. And yeah, I'm totally with you. we'll get to first in Canada in math and retain our top position through the hard work and diligence of all of our partners involved in our education system. So I think I'll leave it there. You may have had additional questions that maybe I missed, but I'll leave it there and just let you supplement any questions that I may have missed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister, and that answers the questions. And I also thank my colleague down the table when she referred to the key objectives that 1.1 on page 37 of the business plan, the very first objective refers to literacy and numeracy, two of our 3 R's that are so important, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But it didn't leave it there. It went on to citizenship and practical skills. Citizenship, I would put that in social studies, and our practical skills. In my mind, I'm thinking this is our high school, these are high school students looking at the trades and maybe some of our dual credit programs and RAP programs. And I love that this is number 1.1, a key objective. And to go into numeracy a little bit, we were with the advanced education minister this morning, and it came to light that there's, as you would know, there's over $1 billion worth of student loan out there for our post-secondary students. That's a heavy burden. And it was my comment that it's too bad that they're coming out with this burden that they're going to now have to work and pay off when they could be saving for a house. And I know there are special situations where loans can come in very handy for certain individuals. I also talk with a lot of college students who are even low income and are paying their way through on their own without a dime from anyone, debt-free, and even coming out with savings. It's possible. So are we looking perhaps to work with advanced education and bringing in numeracy financial management classes at the high school level? And what would that look like?
Yeah, thank you. Short answer to the question is yes, and I'll expand a little bit more on that. Just coming back to, and hate to make this an advanced education committee, but just coming back to the loan piece. During the time I was minister and working to deal with some of the affordability challenges that we were facing in 23 and continue to face, we had heard some recommendations from student leaders and other groups to provide some more flexible loan options. If memory serves me correct, we had expanded loans to part-time students that weren't previously eligible for loans and had made some other changes. So when we look at when the Ministry of Advancement presents the total kind of loan burden, it's part of the reason is because there's a larger catchment. There's more individuals that are able to access more loans than previously. But coming back to your question, indeed, we will be strengthening financial literacy in the curriculum. So in the new K-6 health and wellness component of the curriculum, financial literacy is a component that is taught there. And as we develop the new 7 to 12 curriculum, we'll also continue to look at financial literacy, continuing through the physical education and wellness and other components of the curriculum. In addition, there is, of course, career and life management, commonly known as and referred to as COM in high school. We will be taking a look at that. One of the critical pieces of feedback that I received from my Minister's Youth Council was that there may need to be a little bit more rigor behind high school COM classes. So we will be taking a close look at the structure of COM and the instruction, the outcomes, and if we're taking a look at that to make that a little bit more robust to address student needs. I would imagine that we would want to strengthen financial literacy education as a part of that, help ensure that they understand interest, savings, mortgage rates, compound interest, those other pieces that they will need very shortly, moving into adulthood, potentially, as you mentioned, taking on loans. for post-secondary education. It's important to have a good understanding of those dynamics, return on investment, looking at their educational opportunities, post-secondary options. So that will indeed be a key feature of the revised curriculum as we continue to proceed. And in addition, we, as I mentioned a moment ago, in the coming days, we will be making an announcement with respect to the social studies curriculum. And of course, a key component of social studies broadly is economics, and of course, making sure that there is key learning outcomes and objectives in the social studies with respect to economics can also help to strengthen general financial literacy for our kids.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister. While we're on advanced education, let's continue. On page 38 of the Ministerial Business Plan, it states that in 2021-22, 35.5% of self-identified First Nations, Métis, and Inuit high school students made the transition to post-secondary within 6 years of entering grade 10. What are we doing to increase this number and to contribute to their chances of success?
Happy to address that in the short minute that I have left. One of the things that we are working on, I talked a little bit about it this morning, that we are working on a research partnership between Alberta Education and MacEwan University to collaborate together with First Nation and to strengthen First Nation, Métis, and Inuit post-secondary pathways and opportunities. So that's one of the specific components that we are working to. We've also provided funding, $3.5 million into the Bridging Classrooms to Communities grant pilot program. That'll help strengthen programming for Indigenous students in our K-12 system, and additional funding to strengthen partnerships between our school authorities and Indigenous communities to help ensure that our school authorities are able to provide tailored programs and or services that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students may require to help strengthen their success in post-secondary.
Thank you, Minister. We'll head now back over to the government side.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Minister. And my question is based on education and career opportunities. And Alberta students will be tomorrow's workforce participating in the modern and comparative economy. Outcome 3 of the business plan explains that the Alberta education have access to a variety of learning opportunities to enhance competitiveness in the modern economy on page 38 business plan. And what opportunities are being supported by Alberta education to allow students to explore career options? And could the Minister please tell us a little bit more about the Careers Task Force and how it will positively impact students graduating high school?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you mentioned, the Career Education Task Force was put together to look at strengthening career education in our K-12 system. And there's a number of recommendations that were produced as a result of that report, and we are working diligently to implement the recommendations of that report. There are a number of pieces there. Encourage you to have a closer look at the report, of course, which is available publicly. Look at some of the recommendations, and we are absolutely committed to implementing those recommendations and moving them forward. It is critically important that we ensure our students have opportunity to pursue their careers of interest and succeed in our dynamic market. And that's something that is of priority. It's important as well that we talk carefully and closely with our partners, our school authorities, post-secondary institutions, communities, and industry to look at how we do that. I mentioned earlier this morning I had the opportunity to explore in a little bit more detail some of the work that's underway in Lethbridge and surrounding communities with, I'm going to get the name wrong, so I'm just going to look at my pen, the Southern Alberta Collegiate Institute. And they have some exciting partnerships with post-secondary institutions, school authorities, and industry. It's really working well. So we will be looking to expand those collegiate-style programs in schools that help build greater connections between programming options and post-secondary pathways. We will also be looking to expand and strengthen dual credit opportunities. We spoke a little bit about that a couple moments ago. They're incredibly effective at helping individual students earn credit for post-secondary options and pathways, and increases the likelihood of that individual attending post-secondary versus someone who does not. There are more collegiates. Just coming back to collegiates, there's approximately 7 collegiates, new collegiates that are slated to open as well. And the mandate letter that I've received from the Premier talks in a lot of detail about career education and the need to expand career education broadly. And when we talk about career education, what that really means is I would probably characterize that in 2 broad areas. The first area, when we talk about career education, fundamentally is about creating more awareness and exposure about career opportunities that exist. There are lots of areas where there's incredible demand for in the labor market. Sometimes students may not know of those options or may not have contemplated them. So I think it's incredibly important that we provide more awareness. Career fairs are an example of one of the things that we're looking to expand on. Those help to provide students with greater awareness of some of the options that exist within our schools. Within our society, as an example, there's a shortage of pilots. There's a shortage and a demand for aircraft mechanics and technicians. There's a demand for teachers. There's a demand for nurses and other healthcare practitioners. There's a demand for tradespeople. So helping them recognize and have a stronger awareness of some of those opportunities is critical. And then the second piece of that is about exposure. So creating more off-campus opportunities, creating internship experiences, other types of opportunities where they can actually experience a little bit about what life looks like in those particular career areas. Those are some of the pieces that we're looking at with respect to strengthening career education in our schools. Recently as well, we had a delegation of ministers from Germany come to learn about our success. They were mostly interested in a lot of our success around PISA rankings, as we've noted already, where Alberta performs quite strongly. And Germany has been going through what they call PISA shock, which is a term that they use to broadly define the fact that their PISA results are quite low. As an OECD country, their results are quite low, and they had sent a delegation here to Alberta to learn a little bit more from us about some of the amazing work we're doing. Not to digress, but when they were here, I wanted to take the opportunity to find out as much information I could from them about some of the work that they do in terms of strengthening career education. I think Germany is often regarded as a strong model whereby industry partners and others work together to have strong career pathways in their schools. So I took the opportunity to try and divert the conversation a little bit and learn a little bit more from them about what they were doing from career education. I hope to stay in touch with them and learn a little bit more from their experiences. Apologies for the long-winded answer, but I hope I was able to address all of your questions.
Thank you, Minister, for the great answer. It was the answer wasn't real detailed. Yeah, and again, I will switch to dual credit opportunities. I know you have touched a little bit on it there. And under initiatives supporting key objectives for outcome 3 on page 39 of the ministry business plan discusses dual credit opportunities for students. And could you please explain what the dual credit program is and how it is implemented in Alberta's schools, and what support is available for schools that choose to create a dual credit program? And the last one is, what specific funding from Alberta Education's budget will help support this good program?
Sure. Perhaps I'll just work backwards through those questions. And in terms of specific funding, so there's $12 million that's available in Budget 24 for dual credit opportunities and to enhance CTS programming over the next 3 years. So we do want to make sure that funding is available to support these opportunities and strengthen them. More broadly, I think you asked about a little bit about some of the operation of dual credit, and for those listening as well, of course, dual credit opportunities enable students to earn credits for high school and work towards their diploma requirements, and at the same time earn credits for post-secondary studies. And this is really valuable, of course, and exciting, because if there are a variety of different dual credit opportunities available at an individual school, a student can explore those options, receive credit for post-secondary, and look at career options and maybe eliminate some, or look at other opportunities where they want to do some additional studies and post-secondary options. And so they can be very effective. And the data around dual credit is clear as day. Students that participate in dual credit opportunities are far more likely to attend and finish post-secondary than their counterparts, than students who do not. And I know that apart from dual credit, there are CTS programs, as I mentioned, which CTS, apologies for using the acronym, Career and Technology Studies. And there's as well the Registered Apprenticeship Program, also known as RAP, whereby through the RAP program, students can begin their apprenticeship education while in high school. Thanks, Jeff. That's very helpful. So here's some more numbers, and I think the committee loves some numbers, so we'll provide us some more numbers. So in the 22-23 school year, there were 137,598 students in grades 10 to 12 participating in career and technology studies, non-apprenticeship programming. There were 13,644 students in grades 10 to 12 participating in career and technology apprenticeship programming, 15,422 students in dual credit programming, 2,248 students in career education programming in partnership with post-secondary institutions, and 1,407 of these students participated in the Green Certificate Program to gain experience and certification in Alberta's agriculture industry. So there's a diversity of options available there for students to explore their interests.
Thank you so much. Minister, we'll head back over to the official opposition, and once your time has concluded, then we'll take our break.
Thank you, Chair, to you and through you to the Minister. I'm going to focus my comments and questions pretty much all on page 39 of the Ministry's business plan, having to do with outcome 4, making sure that our educational system and workforce are well managed, key objectives 4.1 and 4.2, and as well I'll touch very, very briefly on the performance metrics as well that are also on page 39 and page 40. So to begin, Chair, to you and through you, we do know that the short-term employment forecast from 23 to 25 states that right now educational assistants are sort of a medium demand sort of a job. However, the long-term prospects are quite markedly different. Our Alberta Occupational Outlook, which has been updated on page 5, notes that by 2030, they anticipate that elementary and secondary school teacher assistants will have a forecasted labor shortage of more than 3,000 workers. And when I couple that with what we know is already a shortage in our educational system of educational assistants, those folks that are there really to help the kids that need the most help, our kids who are the most vulnerable, our kids who are experiencing the most challenges, the most complexities in terms of their own education, to say nothing of my personal experience and lack of paraprofessionals out there, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, just to name 2. I also know that note that there are concerns with educational leaders and stakeholders who have expressed real grave concerns that the numbers attached to the expenses for the instruction for ECS to grade 12, as noted in the business plan on page 41, what they're saying is that the fiscal plan doesn't match the expected and current population growth, nor inflation. And in fact, I also note that the Calgary School Division not too long ago noted that funding levels had returned to 2018-2019 levels. That's not exactly 23, 24, 25 levels. In addition to that, there are some real and current financial pressures for educational assistants and educational support workers generally. And looking at the plans for public sector compensation, which is noted on page 99 of the fiscal plan, and noting that those provide for a less than 4% increase between the 2023's forecast and this year's estimate, what I'm wondering primarily is how are we showing exactly that we're valuing these workers when we know that we're coming into a shortage of about 3,000 workers in 2030, not that long from now. What's being done now to show those workers that we value them in a really real sense, in a very real way, and bearing all of that in mind, kind of a more general question in terms of what the ministry is doing right now to plan for and create the conditions for recruitment and retention of all of those EAs over the next few years. Because my worry and my concern, of course, is that given all of the complexities that I've talked about, one might draw the conclusion that those conditions to retain, to recruit EAs have not been met.
Thank you, Member Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. A lot to unpack there. I guess I would say a few things. First and foremost, that we recognize that it is important that we work towards hiring additional educational assistants, of course, and other educational staff, teachers, but I know your line of questioning was focused specifically on educational assistants. Of course, individual school boards determine hiring practices, determine salaries, determine those elements. But we do recognize the critical value that educational assistants provide in the classroom, especially when we're talking, as we have throughout the course of the day, about learning loss, learning disruption, students with behavioral issues, cognitive challenges, or other areas. Oftentimes it is through the support of educational assistants whereby additional support can be provided to those students and primarily delivered through IPPs and other mechanisms. So they play an incredibly important and valuable role. So one of the things that we can do is work to ensure that we provide additional funding to our school boards to be able to hire additional educational assistants or expand their hours. Budget 23 set the stage for that by providing $126 million over the next 3 years through the Classroom Complexity Grant. School boards, of course, have discretion. Those dollars can be used to hire psychologists, speech language pathologists, or other professionals, but also be used to hire or expand hours of educational assistance. That funding is continuing, and we've maintained that funding in this budget. So budget 24 includes $44 million. This year's proportion of the $126 million for those purposes. And through the measures that our school boards are reporting, it appears as though the additional funding is being used effectively and is achieving its intended goals and outcomes. From the 22 to 23 year, we have seen an increase of approximately 640 educational assistants and over 1,000 teachers come into the system. More specifically, through the funding commitments that we have made in budget 23 and in budget 24, we do anticipate to see our total complement of non-certified educational staff, which includes bus drivers but also includes educational assistants, to increase by about 1,600 or 6% over the next 3 years. And additionally, we have put some dollars aside, about $1 million, to support the number of educational assistant graduates in the province. So there's an interesting pilot underway through Edmonton Public Schools, and this pilot looks to train educational assistants within other school authorities as well. And we have seen some strong success. Actually, a recent news article from the Bow Island Commentator featured a story about Prairie Rose Public Schools' experience with the Educational Assistant Training Program. So this is a really unique pilot program that Edmonton Public Schools is working on, and we've seen some success, and that's why we are providing an additional $1 million to help expand that pilot and see some broader implementation around that program. So definitely something that the ministry has top of mind, and we are looking to address over the next few years.
Thank you, Minister. Member?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to focus a little bit more on that issue of complexity inside our classrooms today, specifically the K-12 classrooms. I certainly note that we've got more children, more complexities, and of course it does depend upon where that particular school might lie, the number of kids they have, where those kids are coming from, that sort of thing. I also know that the Edmonton School Division's class size survey indicated that schools in my area, Edmonton, Beverly, Clairview, are looking at year-over-year increases in student population, and of course that also includes year-over-year increases in the number of kids who are coded. But of course, that isn't that particular group of kids aren't the only kids who need our support. Just to draw upon personal experience, the last school that I was at, we had a kindergarten class of about 21 kids. A few of those kiddos were indeed coded, but there was as well another 5 or 6 children who were not coded. And so when we actually kind of weighed what all of those children were actually worth, that 20-person kindergarten class ended up ballooning to well over 40 children with 2 educational assistants and 1 teacher. So it's an incredibly complex issue to be dealing with, particularly if we're counting kids who are coded versus kids who are not coded. And all of those things, all of those complexities have led to things like there are massive increases in injury rates to educational assistants. On the job, and I do believe that that's a function of simply not having enough educational assistance. And so to kind of cap it all off, to talk about that aspect of complexity, I'm really wondering what it is that we as a government and that the government is planning on doing to make sure that, again, that those conditions for recruitment and retention of all of those EAs are being met. Who is it that's being consulted with? Are we talking to educational assistants who are out there doing that job right now every day? Are we talking to the unions who represent them? Are we talking to parent advisory councils? Are we talking to the ATA, who of course, whose members of course work with educational assistants every day? And I know we don't have time. I totally talked you out of it.
Thank you so much, member. All right, let's take our 5-minute break, everyone. to session here, and we'll start off with the independent member. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the minister. We've heard a little bit of talk today about population growth, with Blackfalds for so many years being the top growing community in Canada, and today we were hearing earlier about Airdrie now being the top growing city in Canada. Population growth is at the top of many of our conversations. So on the page 35 of the business ministry plan, the ministry fact sheet mentions keeping pace with Alberta's growing student population. How does Alberta's growing student population compare to other similar sized provinces? Is our student population increasing at the same rate as the general population? And what does this mean for the amount of classroom spots that are currently available?
I don't think we have interprovincial comparators directly in front of us at the moment, but I'll talk slowly for a few minutes, let my team have some time to look through the information. I do have a little bit of information here just broadly on population growth, so maybe I'll go through that and just give you a little bit of information where we're at just generally on population growth. So in 2023, Alberta welcomed more than 184,000 people to the province, which is just absolutely incredible for a single year. Our annual population growth has been increasing for the last 2 years, and in 2023 we saw our highest growth rate since 1981. So it's very significant, and of course occurring just very recently. A little bit more broadly, so as of October 1st of 23, our population in Alberta was 4.7 million, and we mentioned the 184,000 new residents that we've added. Our growth, in terms of percentage, it was 0.5% in 21, population increase, just to give you some perspective, 1.8% in 2022, and then 4% in 2023. So it is quite significant, quite sudden. We've been talking about this in the committee throughout the morning as well, that we are seeing quite a sudden pressure that does correspond a little bit to the overall enrollment rates at our schools. I know we had a sheet with some of the enrollment increase percentages of some of our metro school divisions. Some of those were, 5, 6, maybe even 7%. I think that was just in our metros, like Calgary Board of Education. They're seeing some of the pressure. When you balance it out, because a lot of the growth is just occurring in Calgary and Edmonton in terms of enrollment. So when you balance it out, though, over the entire year, over the entire province, we are looking at about a 4% overall enrollment increase for our students. So that is broadly in alignment with our general population increase level. As I mentioned, our population increased by about 4.1% in the province, and we're seeing across the province about a 4% increase in enrollment. But again, if you zone in on Calgary and Edmonton, the enrollment percentages are quite higher. Actually, I have it here. Thank you, Laura. It was 5% in 22-23, and projecting 4.7% for 23-24, and projecting 7% in 24-25. And that's just for Calgary, and it's just for Calgary Board of Education. So a little more lopsided in terms of enrollment pressures in our metro areas. Additionally, I have a little bit more information about enrollment levels. Our school authorities are projecting to see an increase of more than 33,000 students collectively. When we talk about percentages, 4%, we're talking about 33,000 students. That's what it means in real numbers. Where are those increases? Where are we seeing those students? So the estimate for 24-25 is that approximately 93% of our students would be enrolled in public charters, Catholic, and other public education providers. 93%, that's 747,000 students. And approximately 7% of our total student levels, student population numbers would be enrolled in independent providers, which represents about 55,000 students. So collectively, we expect to top out over 800,000 students this year, with the vast majority of them, 93%, being in public school operators. In terms of increase between public operators and independent operators, the rate of increase that we're seeing in public is 4%, as I mentioned, in line with our population levels. And we are seeing a larger increase in independent providers. We're seeing that increase at about 7.7%. So we're seeing a little bit more demand in those independent operators.
Thank you, Minister. Member?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister. On page 41 as well, in the ministerial business plan, there is a reduction in budget 24-25 for school facilities. It went from 549, I think that is billion, to 515. The difference is essentially the cost of another school. Can you explain this reduction?
Was that was for school facilities?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yes, so most of the changes are a result of, a little technical, but most of the changes are a result of liability payments for the 2019 public-private partnership P3 bundle that was built under the Alberta Schools Alternative Procurement. The $555 million is a consolidated number. That number includes a few things. It includes amortization costs reported by school boards, which represents $483 million. It also includes Lloydminster Capital Maintenance and Renewal Funding at $800,000. It also includes $25 million for funding for the development of the new charter hub, and it includes $4.5 million in insurance indemnity. There's also $700,000 for remaining liability of the 2019 P3 bundle, which has almost been completed. But that is where that 515 million, what that 515 million represents, and that's why there's a reduction, because it's liability from those previous P3 projects that are coming to a close.
Okay, there's not a lot of time left here, so I'll keep this one short. As far as where students are enrolled today, you mentioned that, the minister mentioned that 93% are public charter or Catholic, 7% independent. In that independent, can you break that down a little bit more? As far as private or homeschool, pods, whatever those are.
Sure, I know we have a minute and a half, so I know my team is looking to pull that information now. So I can break out. I don't think I have. We'll continue to look if we have the homeschool breakout, but I can look at the variance between independent schools and ECS, early childhood service operators, and just provide that to you. So for 24-25, we're projecting an 8.1% increase in the number of students registered at independent schools. That's 3,469 students for a projected total enrollment of 46,344 students. For ECS, that's early childhood services operators, we expect the projection is to see a 5.5% increase. That's a raw increase of 453 students for a total enrollment level of 8,749. I don't know if we have the. I do have the home education and shared responsibility in 3 seconds, increasing by 7.3%.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll head over to the government side.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you to the Minister for keeping up with this today. It's already 4.5 hours in, I believe, by the clock, and I'm hopefully just going to get through some of these very quickly because I'm anxious actually to get back to the member from Edmonton Beverly Clairview because I appreciated the questions that she was asking and look forward to some of those answers as well based on my own interactions with teachers as I shared this morning, with my wife being a teacher and my mom and my sister. Those classroom complexities are a huge component of the struggle that teachers face. And so, again, I'll just get through some of these questions and then look forward to returning to that discussion, I hope, if the member so chooses. But nevertheless, Minister, I've heard you speak previously about the early years assessment as a useful tool to advance numeracy and literacy in Alberta students. And, for myself as I sometimes refer to myself as a young dad, but the reality is I'm an old dad of young kids. This is very important for myself as well, to be able to gauge where our children are at from a young age and then get the plans in place to address areas of struggle or to continue to support the areas where they're doing well. In the 2024 business plan, it mentions these assessments explicitly in key objective 1.3 on page 3. So I was hoping, I'll have a few questions all rolled into this one, Chair. I was hoping that the Minister could explain to our committee what these tests are, also how they will be used to affect students' future learning, and also I'm curious if Alberta's following other provinces in the use of these tests, or is this an Alberta innovation?
Thank you, Member. Minister?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I guess just to your final point, I think your question was whether Alberta's following other jurisdictions in the early literacy and numeracy screening and assessment. It's the opposite. In fact, Alberta is really seen as a leader in this area. And Alberta's really seen as the vanguard, as setting the stage for what strong intervention and screening and support looks like for early literacy in numeracy. We're among the first, if not the first, to require these early year assessments, and many other provinces are taking a very close look at what's happening in Alberta. And I've recently joined the Canadian School Boards Association. They were in town for some meetings, and I joined the head of their school board associations from most of our other provinces. And we had a little bit of a discussion about this, and if I remember correctly, the Ontario School Board Association representative said, "Yeah, we're basically copying this, and we're doing almost precisely what Alberta's doing, and other provinces are really looking at doing the same." So this is an area of strength. These assessments are so great. These are something that we have to. That we all should be quite proud of. The way it works, I know you asked a little bit about what these tests are, how they work, so maybe I'll just talk a little bit about that. So these literacy and numeracy assessments, I also probably refer to them as early years assessments, became mandatory for grades 1 to 3 in the 22-23 year. And they occur twice a year. Of course, the first test is done to get a baseline and determine which students require support. and create some space and time for interventions to occur, and then a second assessment is done towards the end of the year to see how students have responded to the interventions. And this is to ensure that students are receiving essential foundational learning in the critical early years of their education. The science, the analysis is crystal clear on this piece. Any student that struggles with literacy, with reading, writing, and numeracy, and are not at grade level in those formative years will have long-term struggles, not just in those areas, but in other subjects as well. So it's essential that we get it right. And these tests are provided and approved by Alberta Education to ensure that there's consistency across the entire province. And it does provide us as well with essential information about potential student learning issues and needs, and ensures that students who are at risk are identified early and get the help that they need so that they can be successful throughout their educational journey. Student assessments also provide assurance to all Albertans, I would argue, that that our education system is achieving desired outcomes. And there are some additional pieces, because talking about this screening in grades 1 to 3 is just one part of a broader bucket, again, if I can use that, of early assessment. And when we say early assessment, we're broadly talking about kindergarten to grade 6. So we have the literacy and numeracy screening that occurs in grades 1 to 3. We have provincial achievement tests in grade 6, and then we also have student learning assessments in grade 3. So we are talking a lot with our partners right now about this framework generally. How are those grade 1 to 3 literacy numeracy screenings working? What about kindergarten? What about the grade 3 student learning assessments? How do those work in complement to our 1 to 3 literacy numeracy screening? So we are having some very broad conversations right now about the entire framework of early years assessment, and looking to find opportunities to strengthen it as best we possibly can, because I think everybody, the entire committee would agree, the strongest assessment that we could have in those formative years will help ensure that our kids are set up for success. So we are undertaking some engagement right now, and we will take careful consideration of the feedback that is provided by our partners through this consultation phase to help inform and determine next steps. And I'm not sure exactly, what the consultation will produce and what some of the recommendations might be, but I've been asking a lot of questions about kindergarten, of course, and seeing, if it's appropriate to look at assessment in kindergarten or not. So something that we're talking a lot more with, again, folks on the ground, our teachers, our educational assistants, our school authorities, to understand what that might look like, and if that's even possible, or whether it may present other challenges. So I'll leave it there. I could go on for a while about this area, as I'm sure you probably noticed, but it's just, it's some incredible work, and I think not enough people understand the significant work that occurs here.
Minister,
and the strength of our...
I'm so sorry, Minister. You're only allowed to have a maximum of 5 minutes for response, and you've exceeded that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll jump into another question. Thank you for that. And again, I just appreciate how vital that is. Seeing some of the issues that kids carry through into their high school years based on not having those proper tools put in place at younger years. That said, I'd just sort of like to change it up. I'll try to get through this quickly. Page 35 of your business plan highlights how Alberta Ed supports choice with the education system. This includes home education as well as independent and public charter schools. I believe that this is crucial in providing a variety of education program options for students and parents, and supports key objective 4.3 of the Ministry Business Plan, which shows that the Ministry is committed to promote choice in education to enhance student learning. Would you be able to would the Minister be able to inform the committee how many children and youth in Alberta receive education from options outside of the public school system? And for options that are not fully funded by government, could you please explain the funding allocation and how it benefits all Alberta students and families.
Sure, I don't think I'll be able to do all of that in 30 seconds, but I can give you the percentages. Our estimates for 24-25, we're estimating to see about a 1% increase in enrollment for early childhood service operators. We're anticipating, a 5.5% increase. We're expecting to see an 8% increase for independent schools, and we are anticipating to see a 4.1% increase in public school authorities enrollment. That's the general enrollment forecast that we've received.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll head over now to the, just regard that, we're just having a technical issue. We'll head over to the official opposition, and please feel free to just talk over this.
Okay, so apologies, it's me. Sorry. But through the chair to the minister, there's been a lot of talk about increasing complexity of the students and their needs. Early childhood services, when following current evidence and protocols, can make a huge difference in how students progress through schooling and eventually how they contribute to society. And of course, we've just heard a lot of that, so this is actually quite timely, because I would like to discuss the home education kindergarten pilot, which started this past fall. So the pilot's not yet complete, of course, but it does run until the end of the school year. So I'm just wondering at this point, can you tell us, through the chair, can the minister tell us how many children are enrolled for the pilot, what the outcomes that are being tracked to ensure the quality of these home education packages and instruction, and what ongoing assessment is planned to assess how these children from the pilot compare to their peers who maybe attended formal kindergarten or potentially none at all. Thank you.
Sure. I may need, our team might need a couple of moments just to pull up those numbers for you. Just give us a second. Yeah, we're still looking for the numbers of participation, but indeed, as you mentioned, starting in the 23-25 school year, we did introduce the home education kindergarten pilot. 2 million was provided in 23-24, and just over 3 million is being marked for future years as well. Now, of course, we know that children are not mandated or required to attend kindergarten in Alberta, but we have provided some of that funding to eliminate some of the gaps, specifically within home education, where kindergarten children currently are not provided with any provincial support, and we believe it's essential that funding is provided to alternative educational opportunities and programs, including home education. So funding has been set aside for that program. I'm not sure that we're able to find the exact number of students that are enrolled. Maybe we are. No, we are. Just in the nick of time for you. So for the 23-24 school year, Government of Alberta spent approximately 1.65 million in funding to support the pilot, and there were 1,829 children who were registered in the program.
Thank you, Minister. Member?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Minister, through the chair. I appreciate that these numbers are tough to maybe find sometimes, but I'm wondering, just to reiterate the question about how do we ensure quality of these educational packages. So how are we possibly assessing for how these particular children in this pilot compare to formal kindergarten or those who don't attend at all? And then further, I'd like to know which budget line we'd find the program funding in. If you can answer that, would be great.
Sure. I'll find the specific budget item. Of course, as you see on the main estimates, they're all categorized in large buckets. So sometimes it's a lot easier and better just to see, home education and all of these other pieces in a smaller way. But the main estimates, of course, provide a very high-level snapshot. We'll tell you where exactly that's encapsulated. But I think it might be best if I can ask Kindy to chime in on some of the kind of assurance, program assurance that you're talking about with respect to home education and the pilot in particular, if that's all right. Can you?
For sure, thank
Yeah.
you. In terms of some of the assurance measures in place for the home education kindergarten pilot, they are supervised by a school authority, and so we do have check-ins with certificated teachers that review the educational plan. They ensure that the educational outcomes are being met, and that's done twice a year. Department staff, through our own assurance measures, we do some samples with some of those educational plans that we see for home education students, and we will go through and review them and ensure that some of those educational plans are kind of meeting our criteria, as well as the actual educational plans that the parents have set out, just to make sure that those objectives are being met. I'm not sure about the line item.
Yeah. Thank you. I can get back to you on the specific line item. So, of course, with home education, there does need to be a supervising school authority. So, that funding that is provided to home education programs that have a public supervising school authority would be captured in 3.1, page 69, 3.1 of the estimates, and funding that is provided through independent and private school operators would be under 4.1.
Member. Okay, thank you so much, Minister and team, through the chair. So of course, kindergarten is an ideal time for children to learn listening, communication skills, early literacy, basic math concepts, and sets the foundation for the child's future learning. So is there going to be a longitudinal study where we follow these children for a number of years? What metrics are being used to determine whether the pilot goes forward? Is there a plan to compare, for instance, in addition to the comparisons I've mentioned before, but also comparing it to like the COVID cohort that had moved through, of course. And of course, this is all just to ensure that we're not losing the quality of the education that our children deserve and they're all ready to enter into grade school.
Yeah, always happy to look at additional research initiatives and projects. And Kindy or team can correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have any immediate plans to look at kind of longitudinal studies for kindergarten students in the home education pilot program. That being said, of course, as we mentioned earlier, we do have the literacy and numeracy screening that's mandatory in grades 1 to 3. So I would assume that you could draw some connections, if you're seeing students coming out of the kindergarten pilot, home education pilot, and then going through the screening, kind of how they're lining up, and additional assessments, the grade 3 SLA assessments and PATs. So those probably could kind of take the place of a or help track some of the progress. It's not a specific longitudinal study to those individual students in that cohort, but I think through those assessments you would still be able to have some line of sight as to how they're progressing and quality of programming as well.
Thank you so much, Minister, through the chair. So I would like to move on to business plan, page 37. So the first initiative supporting key objectives, a total of $9.25 billion in operating expense in 2024-2025 to support instructional and early childhood service programming in school authorities. So through the chair, can the ministry please share the proportion that's dedicated to early childhood services versus instructional support? And I guess, again, how does this relate to the budget lines? Thanks.
Sure, I'll grab that chart for you. Sorry, you were looking for how much of the funding is allocated to public school authorities versus others?
Pardon me. So between because it's bucketed together as support for instructional and early childhood services programs. So I'm just looking for what's the delegation between the two.
So I have the numbers. I don't know if that's the right chart though.
Sure. Yeah, we don't have that specifically split out just at this stage, but I can give you some higher level numbers. So in terms of the total operating budget, 9.25 billion, as we said. So approximately 8.7 billion, or 94.6% of that entire bucket goes to public jurisdictions. 153 million of that will go to early childhood service operators, and 255 to independent schools.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much. In these last little bit, I just want to confirm quickly, when we're looking at the budget lines 3.1, 3.2 versus 4.1, 4.2, am I understanding correctly that the 3.1, 3.2 is for public, whereas the 4.1, 4.2 is public? Sorry, private, pardon me.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
Excellent.
That, we will move over to our independent member.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and to the minister. Graduating from high school is not a guarantee for success, but a very strong indicator, as we know. And on page 37 of the Ministerial Business Plan, it outlines the percentage of how many of our students are actually graduating. And I was surprised at how low it was. It was 88.8% that will graduate high school this year. That's leaving more than 11% of our students not completing high school. I have a couple comments perhaps, and then a question out of this. The first question would be, does this 88% of graduating include our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit?
Yes, the graduation rate that we show is cumulative, yes.
Okay. The graduation rate for this group is significantly lower. So do you have a rate for the general students without the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit?
Yes, we had talked about this a little bit this morning, so I'll try and remember from that, and while the team is looking at the precise percentages. But I believe on a graduation rate, it was 17% lower for self-identified First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students. And if I'm remembering correctly as well from this morning, the dropout rate is approximately 50%. Just under 50%, about 47% higher for self-identified First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the minister. I am aware of one school south of Calgary, in a conversation with the principal, who said their rate of graduation 5 years from students entering grade 10 was 99% higher, actually, potentially the highest in the province. This school also offered the dual credit program, which one of my sons was able to benefit from many years ago. So graduated high school with a certificate in business management from Bow Valley College, and that's a real gift to be given, for several reasons, and that it is a higher indicator for graduation. It is, inspires children to keep going, and it's also a financial incentive. They get a year of university essentially paid for before they ever arrive. I'm not going to guess what that could mean. Maybe 15,000, potentially higher, of a savings for these students, and that's significant. So it's a delight to hear about the dual credit system that is back. Am I correct that it had been out for a little while?
I'm not sure if it had been out for a while. I don't believe so, but it is.
When my first son came through, it was not available to him.
Oh, I see. So, funding has been available, but of course, individual school authorities make programming decisions and partnerships. So it's not universal. There can be different programs available at different times, so that there is variance between individual schools, and sometimes even at the same school from one year to the next.
So I guess my question to wrap that all together is coming back to the 99% of success rate with this one school. Are these schools being studied, and are they entering into the talks to say, what are you doing right, so that we can apply this across the board and see a greater success rate for all of our students?
Yeah, certainly. We do have regular conversations. We're having some conversations right now with our partners around dual credit to try and get a better understanding of what's working, what's not working, and see how we can further expand dual credit programs. And so we do look, continually talk with our partners and look for opportunities to make improvements. And there is very objective information and analysis around dual credit that shows very clearly that students that have an opportunity to participate in dual credit options have higher post-secondary transition pathways and transitions into post-secondary and greater success in graduation. This relates. We talked a little bit about high school completion rates, so this is an important component of that. And if there's more that we can do, which is certainly something that we are interested in doing further by providing additional funding or strengthening dual credit opportunities, we can hope to improve high school completion rates and create stronger connections and pathways to post-secondary. So definitely something that is of top concern. And just more generally, of course, because one of the objectives of the ministry is to, as we mentioned earlier, strengthen career education, and dual credit plays an important role in that. So certainly something that we have a lot of interest in.
We have an assurance framework that Kendi could speak to.
Yeah, there is also, well, maybe I'll leave it there and see and
Sure.
let you take direction from your supplemental questions.
Okay, sure. I'm going to come back to my colleague's question from across the table with kindergarten, homeschool kindergarten, and I am curious about the future for this. Are there plans to continue this going on? And also, was AHIA consulted about the kindergarten pilot program?
Yes, I'm getting nods from the team on that piece. I believe we did have consultation with AHIA on the development of the pilot. It's hard to say about a future implementation because, of course, it's pilot. So just with any pilot, you want to have some opportunity to evaluate success and challenges and use the results of the pilot to help inform next steps. And see where it goes. You know, that being said, of course, the government is firmly committed to making sure that there is strength in choice for parents. And of course, that there has been that gap with kindergarten, and the pilot is looking to address that. And there's always bumps along the way. There's always some challenges or aspects that weren't contemplated or other challenges. As Jeff notes very correctly here, we're just about halfway through the pilot, and once we're done, once the first year has been completed, then we'll be able to have a much clearer picture of how successful the program is, what challenges occurred, any gaps that may exist, and then use that to help inform next steps. But again, it is a priority to ensure that there is choice in education, that parents have the opportunity and the option to choose educational options that they believe are best for their kids, be it home education, be it independent through an independent operator, a charter operator, a francophone operator, or a Catholic school jurisdiction, or another public school jurisdiction. So it is absolutely essential that those options are available.
All right, thank you. Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister, and in the final seconds, I'll take this one step further, going back to the metrics and the quality of this pilot program. And yes, the families are visited twice a year by a certified teacher in the home, and certain outcomes have to be met. And as a homeschool mom, I can attest to that. And it was very nerve-wracking when that teacher showed up, and you hope you didn't wreck your kids when they showed up. For kindergarten, it's a little bit different. What are the outcomes that are expected for kindergarten age?
Yeah, I might defer to Kindy on that, unless there's any other information that we have. Kindy, you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure, thank you. So with respect to outcomes for kindergarten, we do look at something that we refer to as a kindergarten program statement that's available publicly. So we look to those, but as I'm sure you're aware, kindergarten is, the outcomes wouldn't be similar to, for example, a student in grade 10 or grade 11. So they're a little bit more centered around socialization and some of those basic skills that a student might need to begin grade 1 successfully. So we would look back to that kindergarten program statement in terms of outcomes, but we do also expect that the parent is taking responsibility for that. So it's also balanced against what the parent would like to have as outcomes for their child.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And through to the Minister.
All right, well done. All right, let's head over to the government side.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a rural Alberta MLA representing Drayton Valley Devon, I have questions on rural teaching staffing. And I understand, as you know, ensuring Alberta's education system is staffed properly is of a key importance to maintaining our world-class education system. Areas particularly suffer from teacher vacancies due to their smaller population. Key objective 4.1 on page 39 of the 2024 budget calls on Alberta Education to work with schools authorities on recruitment and retention strategies for teachers and other school staff in underserved areas. So my question is, what does the budget 2024 provide to support the hiring of teachers in our education system, specifically in rural? And could you speak to other initiatives the government is taking to fulfill the teacher vacancies and fast-track teachers who meet satisfactory standards?
Thank you. Very important question, and equally as critical, of course, as we work to ensure that we have highly qualified and accredited teachers in our urban communities. Even more important to make sure that we have strong available staff in our rural communities. And as you probably know better than I, it can often be a challenge to recruit individuals to some of our smaller communities. And I think the same goes for teachers and other educational staff. Perhaps just quickly, you talked a little bit about some of the initiatives that we're taking to fill teacher shortages and fast track teachers who meet standards. Maybe just on the vacancies in the recruitment piece, there is, as I'm sure you may know, the Northern Student Teacher Bursary program. That program works to attract skilled educators to teach in northern schools. And there's also the Rural Practicum Bursary. And the Rural Practicum Bursary provides support to student teachers who are interested in working with rural, northern, and or francophone school authorities, and helps to give them some more opportunity and exposure to teaching in those environments. Additionally, you talked a little bit about fast-tracking teachers. Additionally, there is the CTS Bridge to Teacher Certification Program that you may be familiar with. This program helps school authorities sponsor and hire Journey certificated tradespeople to teach career and technology studies programs. And this was created in cooperation between the Government of Alberta, the Alberta Teachers Association, and post-secondary institutions. Generally, on the question of fast-tracking teachers who meet satisfactory standards, this is something that is also reflected in my mandate letter. and is also an area of policy broadly that we are exploring to see if there are additional steps that we can take and other bridging options that we can implement to help fast track individuals who maybe have specific expertise in specific areas, be that in the trades or in other areas. So we are looking at possible options or opportunities to create some additional fast track pathways. You also talked a little bit just, I think in general, about hiring teachers. I think it's important to reiterate that over the next 3 years, Budget 24 allocates $1.2 billion to help address enrollment growth specifically. And this funding will go to help hire staff, primarily will go to help hire bus drivers, educational assistants, other school support staff, and potentially hire up to 3,000 teachers and educational assistants collectively. And we are seeing, of course, with the enrollment pressures that our school divisions are facing, that we'll need to hire additional staff, and that's why we've provided that $1.2 billion to help address some of those staffing needs. We are seeing success already from previous funding commitments and previous funding that we've provided. According to reports from our school divisions, over 1,000 teachers have been hired for this current school year, and approximately 640 educational assistants have been hired as well. And we will be starting very shortly some engagement on some of those expedited pathways or fast track opportunities that you mentioned. In fact, it actually just some of it started this week, so that's already underway. As we talk a little bit more with our partners, school authorities, the Alberta Teachers Association, and other groups about what additional fast track opportunities could look like. And I think it's important just to highlight when we talk about fast track opportunities that they continue to receive very robust academic and training and in-class exposure to ensure that they continue, or that any fast track teacher continues to be of the highest possible caliber. And just coming back to the rural practicum, because you talked a little bit about that, and Jeff was able to find some numbers and some information, which I think everybody loves numbers. So since 2010, that the rural practicum component, which again provides support for students who are interested in doing their practicum in a rural community, has helped about 485 students since 2010, and we'll continue to look at the success of that program and other programs. So apologies for the long answer, but there's a variety of pieces that we're working on to not just help to recruit teachers broadly, but also to ensure that there are recruitment and retention opportunities in diverse communities across the province.
No need to apologize. You have amazing answers, and specifically 1.2 billion allocated for rural is just amazing. Thank you for that, and the timeliness as well. That it's some of the program starts right away. Rural community would really appreciate that. Other question would be on many families are facing a cost of living crisis due to increased inflation, rising interest rates, and other factors. This crisis has caused some students in our vulnerable neighborhoods to have to skip meals and come to classes hungry sometimes, hampering their ability to focus and learn. I note that key objective in 1.2 on page 37 of the business plan directs the Ministry to collaborate with other ministries to expand mental health and well-being supports for students, which is nice to see that on page 37 there. But question is, will Budget 2024 renew the school nutrition program? Other question I have is, how is the grant calculated to ensure it is allocated where it's needed the most? How many schools receive this grant funding? And how many students are potentially fed from these grants?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the member. And indeed, you're absolutely right. There's, of course, the cost of living crisis that all Albertans and Canadians are experiencing, and increased inflation, rising interest rates, and other increased costs are putting a lot of strain on families, and we see that in our schools as well. And I think everybody can understand that a good nutrition and strong nutrition has a direct correlation to students' learning ability. And good nutrition has positive impacts on student learning broadly. So we do provide funding through the school nutrition program, and we are continuing to support that for the upcoming school year, for the 24-25 school year. That starts in September. School authorities will receive collectively $20 million in funding for school nutrition. In terms of numbers, the program provides daily meals to more than 58,000 students across the province, and funding is allocated through a formula that combines a school division's weighted moving average, their full-time equivalent allocation with socioeconomic status allocation as well, to help ensure, precisely to your point, that funding is going where it's needed the most.
Thank you so much. We'll move over to the official opposition.
Oh, sorry. Me. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. So through the chair, I'd like to discuss school transportation a little bit more. So in the past, of course, this cost was downloaded to parents. Now we do see a budget line for student transportation that's increased around 70 million, although I want to say I heard 80 a minute ago, but anyway. So in all, we have, let's see, 540 million that's being allocated for student transportation. So of course, this does pull $500 million out of our education budget that could be used for classroom funding that's now going to be used, to transport, but again, kids have to get to the classes. This concern is raised by every single school I visited in my riding of Calgary-Acadia. The member from Calgary Foothills mentioned Calgary-Acadia this morning simply because we have 48 schools in our riding. So when I say that all these schools I visited, these different school boards I've discussed, so we're talking about CBE, Catholic, Franco Sud, charter schools, including Foundations for the Future and STEM Innovation Academy, and of course some private schools. So of course, we've discussed already that significant shift in policy to reduce the walk zone for schools to 1 kilometer. This change has brought many a parent to my constituency office, and none were in favor. These families that live across the park from their school can see their child walk safely across to school entrances. For parents such as these, my first question is there an option for an opt-out? And then the second part would be, of course, this changing of the 2.4 to the 1 kilometer comes with a significant increase in the cost of busing. So how many more transportation routes are being added? Thank you.
Sure. So to your question, is there an opt-out? Not currently. The transportation regulation stipulates that, I can't remember the precise date, but by 2025, September 1st, 2025, the school division must provide busing for all students outside of that 1 kilometer drive route. But of course, we are having conversations with our school authorities with respect to implementation of that. A good number of school authorities are already there. If memory serves me correct, about 39 school authorities are already at the 1 kilometer drive. So there's some significant progress being made by our school divisions. I know that Calgary CBE and Calgary Catholic are having some challenges with getting to the 1 kilometer. So we're talking with them, we're working with them. And we're having some additional engagement and consultation around the regulation, see if there's additional flexibility that can be provided. We, of course, want to ensure that we can bus the maximum number of students possible and decrease those walk times because, as we all know, winters can be quite cold. And I don't know how many of us go for a 2.4 kilometer walk in sub-zero and freezing temperatures, let alone elementary school child. So the more that we can do to reduce those walk zones and provide greater access to transportation funding, I think is of tremendous service to families in Calgary and Edmonton and across the entire province. So I think it's something that we must endeavor to work on and improve on. I believe, if memory serves me correct, I think both Calgary Catholic and CBE are at about 1.5 kilometers. So some significant progress from the original 2.4 kilometers. And we'll see. We'll work with them and see how they can continue to move forward. And you're right, there is increased cost. There's additional fuel that's required. There's additional contracts with providers that are required. Thank you. So there are those additional costs, and that's part of the reason why we have increased funding in the transportation envelope as well. And we continue to keep the fuel price contingency program in effect. That helps offsets cost when diesel prices exceed $1.25 per liter. So that still is there, and there's still funding available for the school bus driver grant program. That's to help train and hire bus drivers. And we mentioned earlier about some of the changes to the MELT program to make some of the entry requirements for bus drivers. So there's, of course, multiple different pieces that we need to put into play to help us achieve those goals. And in terms of, I think you talked a little bit about fees. All jurisdictions have reduced or maintained transportation fees in the 23-24 year. So if they weren't able to get to the 1 kilometer, they may have used some of that additional funding to keep fees for parents and families at the same level or even reduce them.
Thank you, Minister, through the chair. So page 87 of the fiscal budget from 2023 indicated that an additional $414 million was being allocated over 3 years for school bus transportation funding. Can the minister, through the chair, confirm that the investment required for this change is $414 million over the 3 years? Like, does that stay the same? What proportion of it was actually spent in this last fiscal year? And is that 70 million, 80 million, the correct figure for increasing, like, for this school year?
Sure, I'll provide some answers to those, and then Jeff might supplement something if I miss anything. I think it's broadly correct, but so through Budget 23, $414 million increase was provided to student transportation funding, with $93.5 million being provided in the 23-24 year, and $160 million ongoing for future years. Budget 24 will provide school authorities with a total of $492 million in this year for the 24-25 fiscal year alone, which is an increase of 79.8. So I know you mentioned the 80 million. So we are increasing on top of what Budget 23 had already laid out. We are increasing that by 79.8 million. That's about a 19% increase for this school year.
Jeff can supplement.
And I don't know if Jeff wanted to supplement with any additional pieces there that I missed.
Yeah, just going back to Budget 23 is where the question originated, was that, so through Budget 23, yes, $414 million increase to student transportation was announced to accommodate transportation improvements over the next 3 years, with $93.5 million in the 23-24 year and $160.2 million ongoing. So as we move in through this year and we get the increased enrollments and everything else, we will true up the actual cost, and yes, at the end of the day, those dollars will be spent in transportation. Well, that's how it flows over the 2 years.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, through the chair, to the ministry. Okay, so transportation funding is now provided for both public and private school systems. Are you able to provide a breakdown of the students' transport numbers for both public and private? I believe you gave us a number earlier. Sorry, Chair. And actually by school board would it be even better? I'm also curious on how many additional students have been provided busing in the 23-24 year.
I may not have those numbers broken down in those categories. I'll let the team take a quick peek and see if they can find that, any additional numbers, at least a breakdown between students that are transported between public versus independent operators. We'll see if we have some high-level numbers. But just generally, 335,000 students are transported to and from school daily. It's quite remarkable, and it's approximately 440,000 kilometers that are transported daily. And just in terms of ride times or routes, there's 5,800 school bus routes across the entire province. Average urban ride time is about 22 minutes, and average rural ride time is 38 minutes.
Apologies to interrupt through the chair, just because we're getting down on here. So there are a number of questions I'd like to ask. If I can get the answers in writing, that would be amazing. So there has been a chronic shortage of bus drivers post the peak of COVID. So how many additional bus drivers were recruited in this last 23-24 year? I'm also very curious about the MELT, or the mandatory entry-level training. So we've talked about it a little bit already. As I understand it, that was discontinued. However, it's still listed as mandatory on our Alberta web pages. So if you could confirm that, that would be great. And since we have if we've discontinued it, how are we assuring adequate driver training? How are we possibly preserving the quality of that threshold that was made through MELT, i.e. experience and training required for the high quality and appropriately skilled drivers for our children? If I can get that in writing, that would be
with 2
amazing.
seconds, I may not be able to get to all of it.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll go over to the government side. The independent member has no more questions. Go ahead, member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like the member opposite, this is my first time through this process, and 6 hours sure goes fast when you're having fun. So, seeing how this is my last block, I would like to take this time to ask some questions on an issue that is near and dear to my heart. That's intergovernmental relations with our ministry. I was fortunate enough to spend a little bit of time within the ministry in an intergovernmental relations role before I was elected. So certainly happy and interested to get an update through the chair from the minister. And this is prefaced on page 35 of the business plan, that Alberta Education collaborates with Canadian and international jurisdictions and organizations to share research and best practices that keep Alberta students competitive on the global stage. So through the chair, my question to the minister is, how does your collaboration process work with the other provinces and with the federal government?
Sure, thank you. And indeed, there are many opportunities in which we collaborate with other counterparts provincially and internationally. I think I talked a little bit a moment ago about some of the cooperation that we are developing and growing with our counterparts in Germany, and which is quite exciting. We're looking to see next stages. I think they had a really good visit when they came a few months back, so hoping to get an invite in the mail to maybe go to Germany or something. That might be quite interesting, so we'll have to see. But we do build on those connections. There are, of course, other organizations and established entities and bodies that we do work very closely with. As an example, nationally, there's CMEC. That's the acronym for the Council of Ministers of Education Canada. And the council has regular meetings, and of course we participate in those meetings and oftentimes share best practices and learn about challenges that are occurring in other provinces and look at what solutions they're putting together. There's also work done with OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement, or IEA, which works to administer studies assessing student performance and abilities. Furthermore, we also participate in a significant amount of international assessments. We've talked a little bit about PISA as well. That's the Program for International Student Assessment. We do, I believe, 81 jurisdictions around the world participate in PISA assessment, so it's a pretty decent snapshot about how you stack up against other countries. And we mentioned our most recent PISA results, 2022 results, show that we're number one in reading and number one in science in Canada and number two in math. When you break Alberta out and stack us up internationally against top performing jurisdictions, we also do exceptionally well against some of the top performing international jurisdictions. We do also participate in international assessments with the Pan-Canadian Assessment Program, Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, or TIMSS, and the Progress in International Literacy Study. We, of course, administer standardized assessments in grades 6, 9, and 12 as well. These are Alberta-specific and are designed to measure students' progress and comprehension and understanding of the Alberta curriculum. So there's no international comparison for these, but it's a good benchmark for us to be able to see how our students are contending with the current curriculum. I could provide more detail if it's of interest. But yes, as well, there have been conversations with other counterparts, and I do have meetings with my counterparts quite regularly, be it ministers of education in other provinces, to learn about what they're doing and some of the challenges that they're seeing, and that work continues. I hope I was able to answer all of your questions, but I'm sure, Madam Chair, if I missed anything, the member will provide some follow-up.
Thank you, through the chair, for that information, Minister. Certainly, our PISA results are a success story here in Alberta, and I appreciated when you were able to share some of your meeting with the counterparts from Germany, and certainly, I'm sure all members of this House share in the excitement of our results and take pride in our students and our school system. So as we all know, education is of course a provincial responsibility, but through the chair again, I would like to ask quickly about what supports do you receive from the federal government as a result of some of the working relationships and collaboration?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'll provide some time for my team to dig up a little bit more of the information with respect to how we work collaboratively with the federal government in certain areas. Of course, education broadly being an area of exclusive provincial jurisdiction, but there are areas where the federal government does provide some supports, primarily around Francophone education, minority rights, and support for Indigenous, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students as well, and other partnerships. We do work with them as well. With some First Nation educational authorities, and we have been talking with them collaboratively on school projects and education opportunities. As an example, just very recently with the Fort Chipewyan First Nation as well. And there are some collaborative engagements, of course, but there are some other more challenging engagements. We've been talking with the federal government, as have many of our school boards, including the entirety of the Alberta School Boards Association, to work with and lobby the federal government to make some changes with respect to the carbon tax. Many of our school boards have written letters to the federal government, and the umbrella organization that represents all school boards in Alberta has also had engagements with the federal government, because the carbon tax equates to millions and millions and millions of dollars of cost for our school boards, and they are ineligible for refunds. So the federal government's failed environmental policies are simply resulting in funds being siphoned out of our classrooms. The costs are incredibly significant. We're not talking about $1 or $2 million. Some of our school boards that have hundreds of thousands. I think some of our larger school divisions have around 120 to 150,000 students, multiple schools and facilities. Their cumulative carbon tax that they pay is quite astronomical, and of course that's set to increase on April 1st. So there's some significant concern there, and we do work with the federal government there. We have as well just signed a new $21 million bilateral agreement with the federal government for support of some of those initiatives that I mentioned. More specifically, that agreement provides funding for French immersion, French as a second language, and for other Francophone minority projects. I wish I had the letter in front of me whereby I think it was Edmonton Public had broken out the total cost that they are forecasting strictly due to carbon taxes, and the figure is quite high. So there's always a bit of that back and forth, whereby we do have opportunities to collaborate and secure funding and sign bilateral agreements to secure support for French language Francophone providers or First Nation, Métis, and Inuit educational authorities and other partners. But of course, there's also some headbutting with policies or initiatives that we might disagree with. So I think I know there's about 10 seconds left. I'm not sure if you'll be able to get another question in, so maybe I'll just use the rest of the time just to thank you for your important question. And if I missed any other pieces, perhaps you can remind me of those pieces in the future.
Thank you so much. We'll head over to the official opposition.
Thank you so much. Through the chair, this did go by faster. It went by a lot faster than I thought it would. I did want to go back to the excellent question that our member from Beverly Clairview had, but I've got one more topic that we just wanted to go into. So we know that Alberta schools are over capacity. We know that teachers are stretched thin, and students are still, in many cases, as we discussed, recovering from those pandemic-related learning losses. So this is a complex time to be a student, staff, or a teacher in Alberta schools. And on top of that, the government has undergone the process of developing and implementing a new curriculum. So for effective curriculum implementation to happen, teachers need adequate supports to make the changes in their classrooms and to ensure that students are not disadvantaged during these changes. Curriculum changes require funding support. It's critical. So base funding line item 3.1 on page 69 of estimates includes curriculum development. However, base funding is going down by $3 million this year compared to last year's spend. Firstly, what is the reason for this decrease? And secondly, what amount of the base funding dollars goes to curriculum implementation?
Thank you, member. Over to the minister and his team.
Yeah, I'll let Jeff chime in on the decrease of the $3 million on that one line item. There's some technical, detailed technical explanation there, so I'll let Jeff jump in on that one.
Sure, thank you, Minister. So through the chair, 3.1 base instruction is funded by two sources, which include general provincial revenues through the General Revenue Fund and education property taxes through the Alberta School Foundation Fund. So the $2.054 billion is a voted spending that is funded by the General Revenue Fund. So we are not decreasing base instruction spending as we expect to collect higher property tax revenue totaling $2.733 billion in 24-25, which is an increase of $229 million from the prior year. The increase of $229 million will be directly used to fund base instruction in public and separate school divisions. Education property taxes are used for instruction, including teacher salaries, textbooks, and other classroom resources. It will not be used to fund government operations, capital costs like school construction or renovation, or teacher pensions.
Thank you. And then the second question was what amount of those dollars goes to curriculum implementation?
Yeah, I can provide some more details on the curriculum. So in budget 23, or in 23-24, in the fiscal year in 23-24, 47.2 million was invested to support curriculum implementation across the province. I can break that out a little bit further. 14.9 million was distributed to school authorities to support professional learning opportunities for teachers to implement the new curriculum. 17.1 million was distributed to school authorities to purchase learning and teaching resources that are aligned with the new curriculum. That breaks down to about $45 per student for more than 381,000 students. And education retained the remaining 15.2 million that was allocated to purchase, license, develop, and authorize learning and teaching resources, enhance the digital platform to house the curriculum. That's at new.learnalberta.ca. If you haven't had an opportunity to poke around there, it's great. There's amazing resources to help you supplement your kids' educational journey and help support that learning at home. And so that was the 47.2 million in 23-24. Budget 24, there's a decrease there. We're allocating 34 million this year to support the renewal of the curriculum. Primary reason why there is that decrease is simply because the heavy lifting of the piloting has been completed. In previous years, the new K-6 math, science, English, physical education, and wellness were all being rolled out, so a higher need. So we anticipate less piloting in the upcoming years. We are still working on the development of the K-6 social studies curriculum, and we anticipate piloting and hope piloting to begin in September of 24 for the social studies curriculum. And other subjects potentially as well at future stages. So that's why you see that decrease there.
Thank you. And how is the government measuring curriculum implementation funding? What measures might you be looking at to see if the implementation is successful? What contingency plans are in place if it is not successful?
Sure. Well, of course, we do work closely with our school authorities and our partners there to see how the funding is being used and whether additional supports and resources are required. Of course, with respect to curriculum and kind of content acquisition and development, we do look at that through the lens of provincial achievement tests and other assessment instruments to ensure that students are understanding the content and moving forward with the content. That, of course, is the primary purpose of our provincial achievement tests, to be able to gauge how students are progressing against the provincially mandated curriculum. I think it's also just important to note, just coming back to the social studies curriculum as well, that we have been having some really in-depth and extensive feedback and consultation with our partners starting in September or potentially even late August when that process got underway. We ran an online survey for about a month in the fall, and 12,000 Albertans participated in that and provided their input, which was amazing. The majority of respondents wanted to see a stronger focus on history and strengthening critical thinking skills. And from September to 23 to January, we've met with education partners, teachers, multicultural organization, Indigenous and Francophone communities, and other specialists, including curriculum development specialists from our universities, including teachers that were nominated by school authorities that have expertise in politics, civics, geography, economics, history, all of the pieces that you'll usually address in a social studies curriculum. And we will be inviting Albertans very shortly to have a look at the draft curriculum and provide some additional feedback before it is finalized and before piloting begins in September of 24.
That answered my next question without me even having to ask it, so thank you. I think we can squish in one more question here. So still on curriculum, the K-6 curriculum rollout maybe hasn't gone totally smoothly. So just wanting to check in on what the plan is for the refresh on the grade 7 to 12 curriculum. Do we have timelines? Is that reflected in this budget here, or is that something coming in future years?
Yeah, 7 to 12 is the vast majority of our attention around curriculum development right now is on the social studies. It's the only grade in which a new K to 6 curriculum hasn't been developed or implemented yet. Of course, there is the new K to 6 curriculum that has been developed and being piloted and implemented in science, math, English, physical education, wellness. So our priority right now is working on getting the social studies. However, work does continue in the background on the 7 to 12. We will be taking a closer look at timelines and implementation windows for the 7 to 12 for other subjects very shortly. And we should be in a position in the coming months to be able to provide Albertans with a little bit more clarity about what the 7 to 12 implementation timeline will look like. Of course, there's a wide range of topics, again, that 7 to 12 development needs to occur for all grades, physical education, science, math, English, social studies as well, fine arts as well. And we mentioned a little bit earlier, we'll be taking a look at career and life management as well. Of course, it's just a high school 10 to 12 level of programming, but there has been some commentary that there could be opportunities to further strengthen that. So short answer is that more will be coming, and some more timelines and updates will be communicated and made available shortly.
It's tough to squish a question into 40 seconds. No, it's okay. No, I was going to say, if you could go back to the member but you're not going to be able to formulate an answer in 30 seconds.
I can't remember what the question was.
I can't remember the question.
I can barely remember.
It's been 6 hours. It's been 6 hours. That's, you know what? You know what? It's good. I would like to thank everyone, actually. I'll just take this moment to thank everyone so much for being here today. This is a lot of day. I really appreciate that all the work that this whole team puts in here. Really appreciate the opportunity to ask questions in a format like this. And just to dig in a little bit on what exactly goes into this budget. So thank you.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Member, over to the government side, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the minister. Page 108 of the government's fiscal plan states that budget 2024 investments will create 35,000 new and modernized student spaces, with 82% of these spaces being built in Calgary, Edmonton, and their surrounding communities. And Chair, if you don't mind, I would just like to thank the minister for giving one of my communities a new school through that project. They've been advocating for this new build, and through the ministry, we were able to shed lots of tears seeing this come to fruition for the children of Natton. So I just wanted to take that time and thank your ministry for that. But my question is, what data do you have on the capacity of students' spaces in rural areas of the province? And how many rural-based schools are at capacity or on the verge of being at capacity?
Sure, happy to address that. Broadly, there are, with respect to budget 23 and the 35,000 spaces that we're looking to create, as you mentioned, the vast majority of those will be in Edmonton and Calgary regions. Just again, as we've heard throughout the course of the day, these are some of the communities with highest demand. We heard in the assembly earlier today that Airdrie is the fastest growing city in Canada. So we're taking a very close look at where those pressure points are, and there's no surprise those large pressure points are around Calgary and Edmonton. Specifically to rural schools and capacity and verge of being at capacity, as you mentioned. Perhaps I'll just provide a high-level overview. Rural school boards have 481 school facilities cumulatively, and overall there is a total utilization rate of 64%. Of these 481 school facilities, 98%, or 470 school facilities are under 100% utilization. Rural school boards have 185 facilities that offer high school programming with an overall utilization of 63%. Of those 185 schools, 98% or 181 are under 100% utilization. There are 296 schools that offer K-9 programming with an overall utilization rate of 65%. Of those 296 schools, 98% of them, or 289 schools, are under 100% utilization. You mentioned at capacity as well, or you mentioned, I think, on the verge of capacity. So schools that are defined as being at capacity is when, of course, their utilization rate exceeds 100%. And when we broadly use the term on the verge of being at capacity, refers to an environment where utilization rate is 95% or higher. So out of the 481 schools that exist in our rural communities, there are 11 schools that have 100% or higher. So these would be ones that we would deem to be at capacity. So 11 out of the 481, and 22 out of the 481 that are on the verge, that are at 95% or higher.
Thank you to the chair, or to the minister through the chair. Turning to page 2 of the 2024-2027 capital plan, I see that a forecasted investment of nearly $103 million over 3 years for modular classroom program. Can you explain how the modular expansions to schools addresses the expansion over a more formal renovation or modernization of a school facility?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think as we all know and understand, modular schools and the modular program can be very effective in terms of short-term solutions to address significant pressures at schools. I'm sure we're all familiar with modulars, have seen them, and understand a little bit about how they operate. And it's kind of, I always call it a plug-and-play, type of model, and they can work incredibly effectively. And yes, you're right, as you've noted, Budget 24 will provide, if approved, $103 million over the next 3 years for the modular classroom program. And that program will be oriented, as I mentioned, to address the most urgent needs for additional space across the province. In the 24 and 25 fiscal year, approximately $50 million will be provided to procure up to 70 modular classrooms and support the relocation of up to 12 modular classrooms. This, I think, as we all can understand, is one of the real benefits of modular classrooms, is that if demand dips after some time, those modular classrooms can be redeployed and reallocated to other areas. There's, of course, cost associated with that. There's a cost associated with everything, and so we have to budget appropriately to be able to accommodate reallocations as well. And the way it works, each year school jurisdictions are asked to submit their requests for modular classroom units, and they provide us with their numbers. And they'll usually do this to help ease and address enrollment pressures, or also to address programming needs. If there's individual or custom programming that's required and they need to make some more space or create some more classroom space so they can retrofit another space for some other option or program. And as well, health and safety. This can occur with some of our more aging infrastructure. If there are health and safety considerations, modulars can be deployed to provide temporary school support and school environment while those health and safety issues are sorted out and addressed. Once approved, school jurisdictions appoint a consultant and a design team to get the site ready and make sure that the modulars can be moved into place. Of course, site readiness is another critical component here, and oftentimes a significant limiting factor. If there's grade issues or just limited physical space requirements, there may be modulars available, but might not be actually able to put them on the ground. The annual modular classroom program provides a way to obtain additional spaces more quickly, as we've noted, to schools that can help to address some of those acute and urgent needs. The program generally includes the procurement, installation, replacement, relocation, and even demolition of modular classrooms. So it's a very comprehensive program, and we, of course, recognizing the significant enrollment pressures and challenges that we're seeing. Yes, building new schools is a priority, and that's why we are moving ahead with the construction of 19 new school projects across the province. It's the largest number of full construction projects in 7 years. But of course, those can take a couple of years to 3 years to be completed, depending on whether it's an elementary school or a high school. And modulars, of course, offer a much more short-term and immediate solution to help address some of those real challenging pressure points. So I realize there's about 3 seconds left, so I'll just thank the committee for indulging me for 6 hours.
Thank you so much, Minister. I apologize for the interruption, but I must advise the committee that the time allotted for consideration of the ministry's estimates has concluded. I'd like to remind committee members that we're scheduled to meet tomorrow 8 a.m. tomorrow to consider the estimates of the Ministry of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.